If you're familiar with me off from Facebook or Instagram, you'll know that I've battled with eating disorders throughout a majority of my life. I first started with anorexia going into the 8th grade, and then after I healed from that, I ended up with bulimia for quite a few years in my late teens to my early 20s. I've spoken about my bulimia as my dark passenger. If you're familiar with the show Dexter, you'll know what I'm talking about. My dark passenger was essentially the incessant voice in my head, or the nagging sensation telling me to, go throw up or go binge and throw up. Basically, every day I would start the day worried about when my next episode would be, and I wouldn't feel happy or fulfilled until I accomplished it. And it was something that I dealt with on a daily basis. I was somebody who was I was a really bad binge and purger. I would seek out food. I would go spend money at a grocery store buying $20 worth of junk food just to binge and throw up. And I always thought that I was going to be doomed to either die or just to deal with it the rest of my life. I didn't really understand or see a way in which I would ever actually stop binging and purging, because my dark passenger, that voice in my head, was so strong. So this is a story about the really wild way in which that dark passenger, my bulimia, which was something that I dealt with for a very long time in my life, finally came to an end. And it's pretty bizarre. So I got into network marketing, and I know that's a taboo thing, but I did it. And I was very successful with it. And one of the reasons why I was successful was because I ended up going to a lot of seminars on personal development and personal growth to help me become a professional at sales and network marketing. Somebody who had an eating disorder would consider themselves as very shy and socially anxious. I needed some kind of professional help in order to be good at it. So I attended a bunch of different seminars, and one of the seminars I went to was a faith-based seminar that was about business and wellness, but also incorporated a spiritual side of it, which kind of sided with the more Christian side of spirituality or religion. So I went to this seminar, and it was my first seminar I'd ever gone to, and I drove 8 hours on my own to do this, which was a really big deal for me at this time. As I said, I was somebody shy. I didn't have a lot of self-confidence, so for me to do something like that was already a big deal. But I went to the seminar, and the first day was incredible. I learned a lot. I grew so much in the matter of just about 8 hours. Well, the next day was another part of the seminar, so it was more business learning and everything. But that night, that Saturday night, the woman leading it was holding a spiritual equipping night. And I decided to go. I was curious. I was kind of like a non-denominational Christian at the time. I grew up going to Catholic grade school, kind of lost my religion, and kind of decided to be a non-denominational Christian. And so this is where I was at that time in my life. So I went. And during this spiritual equipping night, the woman who was leading it was up on stage, and she started speaking in tongues and doing all this, that kind of stuff that you see on TV, and you're like, that's bogus, that's bullshit. And then you want to turn the TV off and throw your TV out the window. That's what I was exposed to. But I was at this point where I had a deep belief in everything that the woman already had told me. She taught me so much in a matter of 2 days about business and wellness and financial wealth. So I ended up kind of buying into it, hook, line, and sinker. And what ended up happening was, towards the end of the spiritual equipping, she had us break up into groups, and she said, hey, if you guys are dealing with alcoholism, gambling problems, eating disorders, you name it, there's a person here from my staff who will pray with you and, help you through what it is you're going through. And so lo and behold, the woman who was to help pray with people over eating disorders had a crazy line. and I wasn't going to wait through that line. And I saw another woman who worked in her staff who was this really tall, elegant looking woman who was pretty thin, and for whatever reason I was guided to her, and I walked up to her and I asked her if she would pray with me. And we began praying, and I began just expressing myself and my truth to her about how I have an eating disorder and every day is a struggle. Every day I deal with this voice in my head that's pressuring me and isn't happy until I threw up. And with tears streaming down my face, sharing my truth with her, with a complete stranger that I never really talked to, something like that clicked. And all of a sudden, that voice that was within my head just completely dropped off the face of the planet. And that was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I haven't had that voice in my head at all like I used to. Now, for like 3 or 4 years, I was really good. And like I said, I didn't have that voice in my head on a day-to-day basis. And I will be totally honest with you that sometimes that voice now, it does kind of creep up every now and again. But I am more well equipped through all of the psychedelics that I've done, the therapy, the self-help, the personal development, the books, the seminars, all of those different things that I've been to. I am more able and conscious to kind of evaluate it and see it for what it is and dismiss it instead of allowing it to take me over like it once used to be able to do quite easily, to the point where I thought I was going to die of bulimic. So I don't know, for me, maybe it's like a placebo effect. I walked into it with so much faith that by speaking to somebody, it would help to relieve my conscience and help me to feel better or to totally eliminate the bulimia in general. I don't know, but that's what I'm leaning towards, why something like a woman who's speaking tongues and this faith-based healer was able to, not necessarily her even, but her member of her staff was able to help me work through my bulimia issues and my dark passenger all within maybe a 10-minute prayer session. So I haven't gone to any rehab centers. I haven't sought professional ongoing help for bulimia. This was like 6 years of my life I spent just thinking about bulimia and had no other thought in my head other than when I might binge and purge next, to all of a sudden like that voice in my head completely stopped. And now I'm, as far as I'm concerned, I have dealt with that section of my life and I made it out on the other side without the need of going to rehab, without the need of seeking crazy help from an institution or a hospital setting. And for that, I'm extremely happy. And not to discount that that isn't necessary for people, or it isn't a great way to get help through something like an eating disorder or bulimia or whatever it might be. But I'm just sharing my story about how I was able to transform myself and to kind of just kick bulimia and all of those incessant thoughts about binging and purging to the curb. So if you found this video interesting or insightful or even crazy, go ahead, give it a like, sub, comment below. Please subscribe to my channel. Look me up on all of my other social media platforms. You can find me by Kelly Hanner. And thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.